welcome to the StreetSmart Podcast.
Bienvenidos a StreetSmart Podcast. I'm Gaby.
I'm Gwen.
And here we are. Episode 1. Welcome.
It's starting.
It's happening. It's happening. We're telling that more to ourselves. But
oh my gosh.
It's fine.
Yeah. Welcome to our space and welcome to the podcast. We're happy you're here.
We are.
We're here to give you the tools you need to navigate public spaces, urban spaces, your community, all the spaces that define you and make your community what it is, and who the people are in your area.
And also not your areas. When you go someplace new, or when you travel, or you're talking to friends, even weird in-between spaces. We're here to give you information, resources, conversation, our hot takes on all of these things, because urban planning is one of those catch-all kind of studies, essentially, where a lot falls into it and a lot impacts it. So a lot of people, a lot of you all interact and are actively urban planners, essentially, without even realizing it. Like, we all have the abilities to shape our communities and the spaces that we inhabit. So our conversation, why we're really doing this is to add more context to those situations and those circumstances and, the things that happen around us, as well as provide resources for you as an individual to take into your community, to share with your friends, to allow you to elevate and to adapt and to grow in your space versus just simply being there. Existing, right. Because I think we all, especially post-pandemic, we all know what it's like to exist in a space but not really interact with it. And so now we are here trying to help people, and also, again, just give hot takes, add our perspectives as women of color in the planning field, which is, just like everywhere else, a rarity. We are obviously minorities. So, that's kind of why we're here.
Yeah, it's just elevating the space. I feel like a lot of people ended up enjoying their public space during the pandemic and actually acknowledging its value. Parks were popping off during the pandemic.
I love that. I need a sticker that says that. Parks are popping off.
They're hip. They're the new club. Everyone loves a good park, a good bike path. I feel like people gain more of an appreciation for those things, and it's a good time to do this. People are I feel like a lot of people, especially in urban environments, no one wanted to be stuck in their apartments or their apartment buildings. They were able to just go have picnics, go on cool walks, starting to get into biking and stuff like that. So if you're one of those people, welcome. It's awesome. We value those spaces too, and want to share our perspectives on those spaces and making them safe for everyone, and also being able to elevate those spaces and make them better is awesome. So I guess we can get into why we're doing this and kind of a little bit about ourselves.
And then our vision really for the podcast, even though that will kind of be sprinkled throughout. This is our first time either of us are doing a podcast. Right. So a lot of this really came from just natural, organic conversations that we've had over many, many years. So we're still trying to figure out how to put this in a podcast format. But we hope that this kind of sounds you talking to your friends, essentially, or just talking to someone in your community. That's kind of the chill vibe that we're going for. We're not trying to shove information down your throat. We're not about to tell you what you should do, even though sometimes I do talk that way. I'm sorry, I'm Latina. I don't know what to say. At the end, we have our opinions on things, but ultimately, we want this to be a very organic conversation. If you were to just be talking with people in line at the bodega waiting for your fucking sandwich. Damn. I'm sorry. We curse
Bodega enthusiasts.
Bodega enthusiasts. You already know the vibes. I've been about it. I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. But yeah, so that's kind of, you put this on while you're cleaning your house, while you're working, while you're taking a walk, riding a bike,
commuting.
Yeah, commuting. Yeah, we just want to kind of be these people in your ear, just chatting, and we're definitely open to comments and suggestions and feedback. Do not bring that negativity because we'll just ignore it.
Facts.
Like, straight up.
Like, scroll through.
We will.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
Only positivity.
Only positive vibes here. Like, we don't stand for that shit. So please, like, let that be known. You've been warned.
Cool.
But
so yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, Gaby.
Yeah.
What's your origin story?
Who am I?
Why do you like cities so much?
What am I doing here? So, origin story. Let's take it back to the beginning. I was born in the darkness. Brett, no, I'm just kidding. But, so
the Vikings came.
I'm a villain, honest at heart. I'm that person that's like, wow, this villain really has some strong points here. But my name is Gabriela Pino Moreno. That's probably the only time you'll hear my full name, honestly. But that's not even my full name. That's actually Latina problems. My name is long, but my name is Gabriela Pino Moreno. I am Puerto Rican. I am 26 years old, turning 27 in about a week and a half. Scorpio gang. Actually, when this podcast drops,
comes out, yeah,
it will be my birthday, November 7th. So,
should have had like balloons.
I know.
But in the future already. It's like your birthday, so happy birthday.
Cash at me. Yeah, right? Say happy birthday. If you get to the end of this podcast, comment with happy birthday. I don't know. But yeah, so 26, turning 27 soon. I have an undergraduate degree in urban planning, regional studies, minor in economics, and then a master's degree in urban planning and nonprofit management. I kind of came about urban planning in a weird kind of way, very sideways kind of way per most people. But story of me and my family is that my family immigrated to the United States when a lot of Puerto Rican families were immigrating in the 50s through the 80s. A lot of people came over. So because of a lot of things, and come for further episodes and I'll dive deeper into that, but to keep it short, they came over. I come from really big families. My mom is child 6 out of 7. My dad is child 4 out of 7. Yeah. And then also my grandparents. Oh yeah. And then my grandparents, all of them have at least 5 siblings. If you know, just big family vibes. So I got a lot of titis, a lot of tios, a lot of cousins, a lot of primos, primas, a lot of second cousins. I have second cousins older than me. If you know. But so they came over, and when they came over, they came to New York City. And so that's kind of where my context for urban planning originally stemmed from. In Puerto Rico, my family is from the countryside, essentially, the southern side, Ponce, Salinas, comment below if you Boricua, let's get it, but the Arroyo, those kinds of places, the southern part. So it's city, but mainly country and villages. So big culture shock. They moved to the United States and moved to New York City, Brooklyn to be specific. Bed-Stuy, do or die. Brooklyn is really my second home, and I'm not new to this, I'm true to this. But so my parents grew up in New York, and growing up, I had a lot of context for New York City, and especially Brooklyn and Queens, because we would go back there all the time to visit my families that lived there. My dad's side predominantly lived in Brooklyn my entire life. Some of them still live there now, but we would go during, the summers and Christmas and holidays, and I've always just loved New York. I have such a great appreciation for that place, the good and the bad and the ugly, because in full transparency, I don't come from money. And that's something that me and Gwen both share. Our parents grew up in similar situations. Those things that they talk about in urban planning, that's very much the urban renewal, affected communities in this way, and the exodus of jobs, and Ronald Reagan affected communities in this way. It's one thing to talk about it, but our parents lived through that.
There's no like generational wealth.
There is. We are.
Like there's a line
currently trying to do that.
Yeah.
Like we are building that for people. So because of that, like the stark contrast of that, it's always been very intriguing. Again, like I said, I'm a bodega enthusiast. Like I grew up going to bodegas and, you know, getting the cheap food and going to the Asian markets in Brooklyn and getting the live seafood and just like all the culture. Such a stark contrast to where I lived in Virginia because my family had moved to Richmond and it's not as diverse and a lot less crowded, to be honest. So always comparing that. I'm that type of person. I'm an artist as well. I'm a painter. So I'm always looking at visual things. I'm always comparing things. Like I'm intrigued by colors, shapes, sounds, smells. So being able to compare those two really intrigued me because there are parts of Richmond also that I absolutely love. There's a grunge and a grit to Richmond that is reminiscent of Brooklyn, to be honest. So because of all of that, I always had it in the back of my mind, and I always considered myself a city person because that's just how I always moved.
Facts.
And so,
city girls.
No matter where, right, city girls. No matter where I was. And so I originally went to school for art at VCU. I was in VCU Arts for one semester. Different story for a different time. But then I moved over to urban planning because I was originally going to do interior design and a minor in urban planning. But I was like, you know, I'm going to give urban planning a shot. And like all of the conversations that we were having in class, kind of like I said before, it's like there's like a textbook and theoretical way that people describe things, and then there's like the context that I grew up with, knowing from my parents and from, you know, my titis and my tios and my grandparents, and
it like resonates with.
Yeah. Also, you know, having family that has immigrated. You know, people say Puerto Ricans can't immigrate, but like it is a real immigration to the United States. Like I always also had that context of like, we're from here, but we're not really from here. Like ultimately Puerto Rico is a colonized land, so we have a very complicated identity. And that also further kind of pushed me into urban planning because it's like the idea of place, the idea of ownership, the idea of being somewhere and feeling like you're at home. I know a lot of people can speak to the fact that it's like, I'm not from here, but I'm not from there. Ni de ahí, no de allá. Like, and so because of that, taking those classes, I was like immediately intrigued, and it's like, I have a very different perspective on this. Yeah. And it's reality, because you're not about to tell me that the experiences my family had are not valid, you know? So I kind of pushed that through all the way through undergrad and grad school, and here I am now kind of trying to find an in-between between like urban tacticalism and public art. Again, I'm a painter. I love art. You know, I've done murals. I've been in exhibitions. I've been in museums. Like I'm still kind of like working that side of my career as well, but also bringing it into community planning because I am Latina. Like I am a community-oriented person. Like I grew up around my family. Not all of them. Definitely, I have mad family members, but you know, like I grew up around a lot of people. Like I have cousins that I would see almost, you know, every week, sometimes every day at some points. So they're like literally, you know, my siblings type shit. And so understanding, like, because I had that, I always had a understanding of my identity.
Yeah.
And the people that I considered, I always had a community idea, but I never could find that outside of that. And even now, I feel like I still search for that. Living in DC, I live in DC. And DC, like, it has more diversity, but if you're Caribbean, like, you know, like, it's not a lot of Caribbean people in DC. So it's like you have to foster that community. And so through all of these things, I'm trying to, like, me and Gwen are here to create this space. Yeah. And that's kind of what has, like, led us to this. So that's a little bit more about me. I'm a Scorpio, Taurus moon, Aquarius rising.
the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean those are my top 3. They're all fixed signs, so that's who I am in a nutshell.
Oh my god.
Gwen,
what's my origin?
Tell us more about yourself. What is your
gosh.
origin story? If she's a superhero, I'm the villain.
Not even. I'm like all chill vibes over here.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar. That's how Gaby and I met through planning school at VCU and yeah, navigating that space. But like before that, like yeah, I'm like a military brat, so I just grew up like in different places and kind of like never had that sense of community. Like I was always like away from like my family and like finding community through like different military families or like, and I think that's why I might be like really good at adapting to different spaces and like different environments and like living in different areas. I'm just like, okay, this is what I know and I'll just keep doing it. But also what comes with that is like I'm in this constant ebb and flow. Like anyone who's a military brat can relate. Like you get an itch to move like all the time, which like creates some instability and like probably need to work that out in therapy. But anyways, but yeah, like my parents born and raised in Philly, so even when we weren't away and like we moved to Virginia, like went up to Philly a lot, corner store, love a good bodega, corner store, but and that was like I was like, wow, like this is amazing, but also came with like some guilt of like, you know, my dad and like my parents, like they got out of like the projects in Philly and like going back it was like I'm grateful for what I have, but I'm like, why don't we live in the city? Why don't we do these things? And when I was younger, it was hard to just grasp, like, you don't understand, like, they were trying to get out of that environment. That environment was toxic. And, like, then later on, like, when I'm older, telling me the reasons why they were, like, trying to get out of that place. Because before it was just like, oh, this is awesome. Like, we live in the suburbs. Like, why don't we live here with our family? Why aren't we close to our family? And, like, you know, what has happened where like we can't live in this space because I thought it was amazing. I want to take the bus to school. I want to like hang out on this cool like urban city playground. And when I was like, I don't know, like
able to walk to your friend's
7,
house,
yeah, like we were just able to like walk to my uncle's house from like my grandma's, and like I was like, oh, why don't we have these things? But not really understanding like the trauma my parents went through until I was like a teenager. Like, okay, now I get it. Especially when I was an adult, it's like, okay, now I see it. And like that scarcity mindset and like the trauma they've went through, like definitely still resonates with them. And like, I've definitely tried to like have like those hard conversations with them and like try to understand them a little bit better. So yeah, that's depressing as fuck.
If you know, you know.
But besides that, like, that kind of introduced me into, like, urban environments and, like, just why they're so important to me, even though I didn't grow up in one and a different community. And then moving to Richmond to go to VCU after high school. That's how Gaby and I met, and I met, like, some amazing people in my undergrad program, so shout out if you are listening.
Right, shout out if you're tuning
most
in.
Supportive, most amazing people I've ever met in my life, to be honest. And then, yeah, Gaby and I went to grad school. She started like a semester after me, but I don't know. We started like on and off. Yeah. But we still had some classes together. So.
I mean, also during our graduate year, COVID hit.
Oh, yeah.
We graduated not that long ago, so we had a very interesting second half of our graduate experience. Which definitely just disconfigured a lot of different things.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And we'll talk more about that in another episode, honestly.
And then after that, like, yeah, I started interning at GRTC, a transit agency in Richmond. Interned there, worked there full time. And then now I've moved over to the consulting world, drinking the consulting Kool-Aid, and I absolutely love it. I love working on different projects, and yeah, I guess like some hot topics for me are definitely like transit, accessibility, placemaking, all those things. And I love other things too when it comes to like community design and community spaces, public spaces. Whether that's like murals, urban art, like farmers markets, anything that like fosters community building. I'm here for it. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. And Gaby lives in DC. I live in Boston, work in Boston, and
that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, that's where we're at. We're able to record this together. Technically, it's Gaby's birthday, so this is like the launch/birthday episode for Gaby. So this is like basically dedicated to you.
I love that, and I didn't even say where I worked. Totally forgot where I worked. I work for DC Public Schools, and I modernized their building portfolio, essentially. So schools that need to be renovated or additions added on or playgrounds need to be added, things like that. That's my job, essentially. I work with a bunch of different stakeholders and kind of like pull that all together for the city type of thing. That's a very broad description of my job, honestly, but it's weird. It has like urban planning and a whole bunch of interesting ways, for sure.
We'll probably have episodes like dedicated to each of our jobs. Yeah. Like sooner, because we're on like different ends of the spectrum, but
we are.
But also at the same time, it's almost all the same. Planning is so complicated, so that's why we want to like break it down. And even though I'm more focused on moving people, like you're definitely more focused on creating like
those places that they're moving to.
Yeah, those places, those safe spaces, and like community. I mean, schools are like the backbone of communities.
Yeah, and DC does a really good job to make neighborhood schools, community hubs that provide a lot of different resources. I don't know where any of you guys grew up, but where I grew up, the schools didn't really do that. Between like Chesterfield and Richmond, they did not provide much of anything for anybody. And there was also just like a lot of underlying racism that really, I would personally say, stunted a lot of people's growth or made things, obstacles for people that made it a lot harder to move through those systems versus DC, where they have a lot of different programs for a lot of different things. They got a lot of English second language for not just Spanish, but Amharic, Mandarin, Chinese, Russian, Vietnamese, all those things. They have a lot of different special ed programs and things like that. So when we design those buildings, we keep all those things in mind. We provide lactation rooms. We provide for staff and parents. We provide like community kitchens and community spaces. All of our playgrounds are accessible to the public for free after school is out. So
Amazing.
Like things like that where they come with their pros and cons, but the goal is to create these community hubs that provide safe spaces and also resources for the students as well as their parents and the staff, because there's a recognition that a lot of children go through a lot of different things.
Facts.
And teachers, as much of the superheroes that we want them to be, like they can't have all of that on their shoulders. Like they need help with that, and the least that the public system could do is provide proper infrastructure to have programming to provide more resources. So that's kind of where my job lies.
Sure. Yeah. And I feel like we have to acknowledge, like, we know this stuff doesn't happen overnight.
Nope.
Like, we are practicing planners. Like, we're very aware of, like, these processes and, like, how they work and, like, the institutions, like, all of these plans that we want to see in the future. Like, we know the criticism they get, like, what they go through. We know the NIMBYs out there that fucking hate planning. And
not in my backyard. You've never heard of that. It's people who are like, that's cool, but not here. That public park idea is dope, but not in my neighborhood.
We love that bus, just like not here.
Right, that's a cool bus, but why does it have to stop 2 blocks from my house?
Why is it
I don't
on
like
my
the people
street?
riding on the bus. Right, why is it going down my street?
But we definitely realize, like, this stuff, like, doesn't happen overnight. We want to just bring, like, more awareness to, like, people getting involved in their communities and being those people at the public meeting that that actually attend and really want to get this information to improve the spaces around them. And even, like, other spaces where, like, there isn't that strong advocacy or, like, your city, your local government, like, could be doing something better to create a better community and a better, like, neighborhood or I don't know, neighborhood centers, public amenities, like,
yes,
yeah, we want to help, like,
public infrastructure.
Yes, so important. Just like Gabby was saying, like, about the schools, like, that's literally, those hubs, like, really foster, like, good community and good placemaking. And
yeah, well, and that's really what urban planning is, essentially, because your job is also like that, where it's like when you're on a bus, when you're on a train, if you're riding a bike, it's like you want to feel safe, you want to feel welcome, you want to feel like you can actively use this resource, and it not be a strain on your time, on your wallet, and, you know, it's a place that you want to be, kind of thing. So often we think of, you know, transportation as like, it's just me and I need to get to this place. But for a lot of people, like, it's a community action. You know, you're riding a train with a bunch of other people. That is a community space. And so I'm sure many of you have seen, you know, the articles online of, like, you know, public transportation isn't safe for women, it's not safe for children, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, what can we do every day just as an individual to make it more safe? And that's kind of where we're coming in, because we are practicing professionals, but we are also trying to, like, break down the gatekeeping that, you know, we faced kind of in, like, the urban planning academic field, as well as anyone who's approaching things from that way. They try to make things seem like you won't be able to understand, or you won't be able to have a real impact, and that's simply not the case. By being more aware, like, in a public transportation setting, like, you actively are making that space safer. If you know what should be there and how people should act. You know what I mean? Like, if a pregnant person walks on the train, get up and let them sit down. You know, it's stuff like that where you may be like, wow, that was a very simple interaction, like, that doesn't matter, but everyone is watching you on that train. It sets the tone, it sets the mood. It does, yeah. That is something that, like, is very, like, maybe small and minute, but is impactful over time on an urban planning scale, because you're setting the tone for your community, you're setting your tone for that space and, like, maybe that time frame. So we're gonna be breaking things down on that level. We're not about to be like, you know, you need to write to your congressperson, you need to call everybody up and, like, post on social media and do all the things and say all the things. Like, you don't have to do that. It's just whenever you are interacting in those spaces, how you can show up as a better community member, and by doing that, making it just a better experience for everybody, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. That's literally well said.
Yeah.
And just understanding, like, the spaces that we're in and how they function is so valuable too. And
yeah. Also the history of spaces as well, you know. We are on colonized land. We are this is native.
You are
land.
on native land.
As a Puerto Rican person, like, but, you know, having that context, not even just for, like, native land, but for the whole topics of gentrification and, like, people of color used to live in this neighborhood, and now it's gentrifying. It's like, we're definitely going to be having a few episodes just talking about, you know, what gentrification is, how it happens, the stakeholders involved, who is ultimately in control of those things, because there are a few players at hand in those situations, how you can combat it, and also how, you know, revitalization of a neighborhood should be implemented, essentially. You know, there are a lot of different moving parts and a lot of things that are outside of our wheelhouse, as far as, like, you know, we don't work for social services, we don't get to decide living wages, we don't get to do those things. A lot of urban planning is really just giving your, you know, thoughts and your feedback. It's like, this would work better if you did this.
Yeah.
So, you know, we kind of also are in a weird in-between space, like you guys as well, where it's like our professional opinion sometimes is all we get to offer. And you learn in the world that, like, they don't have to take it. You know, you can give your opinion, they don't have to take it. So,
but knowledge and advocacy go a long way.
Yes.
And yeah, over the next few weeks and few episodes, we'll be talking about, like, walkable neighborhoods, walkable cities, food accessibility, like Gabby was saying, gentrification, community development. We have so much coming.
Yeah,
it's going to be
art, you know,
social,
like,
services,
cultural
public amenities.
enclaves. Yes,
we'll have so much
accessibility. Like, all these things that impact everyone's life on a day-to-day basis. You know, we want to make these space. We want to bring down the walls of like, this is a scary thing, or this is something I know nothing about. Like going into an ethnic neighborhood where you're like, I don't speak this language, I don't look like these people, but like, you can still respect that space and interact in that space.
Exactly. There's space for you.
Always.
Space for everyone.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That should be our new logo. There's space for you. I love that. That could be like on a t-shirt.
I'm genius.
She's dropping all of the one-liners today. I'm over here just like,
no.
You see why we're partners?
Yeah. We're so glad you're here, and keep listening. We're going to be dropping an episode
every other week.
Bi-weekly. Bi-weekly. So nothing next week. Don't come. Lights are off. No one's home. But the following week, we'll be there. We're going to celebrate Gabby's birthday. And just stay tuned for more. We're going to be more interactive on Instagram, YouTube.
Wherever you stream podcasts is, you know, maybe when this episode comes up, we won't have all of our streaming platforms together, but like, please know that if you're coming in a little bit later, everything will be on wherever you can stream your podcast. And we also have the YouTube component where you can see our beautiful faces or baddies. I know. Yo, me and Gwen used to run these streets.
See my casual fits.
Don't let it fool you. I'm going to try to resurface some photos from college.
Oh my gosh.
Evidence that we are out here running these streets. Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And I feel like, we should thank everyone who listens to this episode. This is just the beginning. And
thank you.
Yeah, wanted to tell you guys like a little bit about ourselves and really kickstart this project. And more content is coming soon. So, awesome. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And thanks for listening to the StreetSmart Podcast.
StreetSmart. Thank you. Bye. Adios.
I'll be the same.